What's up everyone, and welcome to another Rust electrical tutorial. I'm Austin, and today we are talking about auto on-off emergency generators. This is probably one of the most requested builds since I started this channel, and so we are finally going to cover it today. And so the idea here is that you have some battery in your base and you are charging it with some root power source. In this case, I have 8 solar panels set up to charge it. And the question was, how can I have a generator turn on when that root power source drops below some threshold and then turn back off again once that power source has returned to normal? And that's what we're going to do today. And so this infographic here just kind of shows the idea is that you would, as the player, set some desired charging voltage to be monitored. It would monitor it, and then if it fell below that set value, the generator is going to turn on, and then once it returns above that value, the generator will turn off. And so with a couple of like small caveats, this actually works very well. And so the way we're going to start here is just kind of start with the root power source. So again, I have 8 solar panels. This could be wind turbines and solar panels, whatever. And it's running to this power bank. If you'd like to know more about how and why I do it this way, you can check out my video. I'll link that for you. But I've got these 8 solar panels running into this power bank down here, all truncated up to this output here. And then I have an extra root combiner here that's for the generator so that I can tie it into the system. So, you know, the rule of thumb here for root power sources is however many root power sources you have, minus 1 is the amount of root combiners you need. So 8 solar panels is 7 root combiners, but I have a 9th root power source here, the generator, so I've added 1 so that I can combine that in. So that's pretty much it. We're going to go ahead and start with the circuits to build this. The build is kind of broken up into 2 sides here. We have the delay timer set up here, and then we have the generator based circuits down here and on the other side over here. So we're going to start with the delay timer just because that's you know, its own item. I made a video about this, but you don't need to see it in order to understand what's going on here. The delay timer consists of 2 branch switches, a timer, a blocker, and another timer. The first branch switch is the main power in, and then it daisy chains after, so we'll start there. You're going to need to have 8 volts arriving here at this branch, and we'll talk about how I have that set up. But we have 8 arriving. The branch takes 1. We want 2 coming out here and 5 coming out here, so we're going to leave it in its default configuration so that we have 2 and 5. So we have 5, 6, 7, 8. The branch out of this first branch is going to run to the power input, the electrical input of the timer here. It's going to be set to 0.25. It doesn't really matter what you set this to, just something small, 1 second or less. 0.25 works really well. And then its output is going to be connected to the force stop on the generator. And so then the power out of this first branch is going to daisy chain to the power in of the second branch. So we should have 5 arriving here because we want 2 coming out of here and 2 coming out of here. So 2, 4, it needs 1, 5. The branch out of this is running to the blocker. It doesn't matter if you run the branch or the power out to the blocker or this timer because they require the same, but it's easier to see if you do it this way. So branch out is going to run to the power into the blocker. Its power out is going to run to the toggle on of this first timer. The power out of this second branch is going to run to the electrical input on the second timer. I have this one set to 5 seconds. This is the duration to which the generator will run and before it cycles in one case, which we'll talk about. But this is how long the generator runs. So if you want the generator to run longer, 30 seconds, a minute, 5 minutes, whatever you want, the generator, this is the one that controls that. So I have this set to 5 seconds just for this tutorial because it's easier and you don't have to wait as long. Its output is run to the block pass-through, and then its toggle on is connected to this power out of this branch down here, but we will talk about that that is part of the generator circuit. So that is the delay timer portion of this. The generator circuit is kind of broken up into 2 sides of the battery here. So I'm going to start on this side of the battery. And the reason that I'm powering all of this from the battery itself is that this is the whole purpose of this is to protect this during its charging. And so if you were to say use a small car battery, which if you've seen my generator video, you can use small car batteries here. to power these things on. But if that were to die for some reason, it would defeat the purpose of this. So I'm powering this off of this main battery, although you do have that choice if you want it. So the power out of this is going to run to this branch here. Its power out is what you have available to you to run stuff on your base. So if you set this up the way I've done it, at least with this version 1, it's going to require 12 rust watts to do, so you're going to end up with 88 rust watts available to use as you please, which is why we're going to set this to 11, because its branch out is going to run to this branch up here, and this is a power distribution branch. We're going to leave it in its default configuration because we want the branch out here has 2, and that's running over to the input on this blocker down here. We need 2 arriving because we want 1 to pass through this blocker, which is connected to the force start on the generator. Whereas if you recall, the force stop is connected to that timer up there. The force start is connected to this output on this blocker here. The other side of this power distribution branch here, the power out is the 8 that we needed arriving here at this branch here. That's where it comes from. So we have 8. So we have this set to 11. We have 11 arriving. 2 are being used. 8 here. So 2, 10, 11. And that's it. So then from this side here, we have from our power bank here, the output of this branch here is what we're going to talk about why I set it to what I set it to here in a moment. But the output of this branch here is running to the input, the power in of this branch over here. And it's going to be, its branch out is running to the power in of this branch over here. Its power out is running to the block pass through on this blocker here. The branch out of this is your charging line. This is what runs to the input power in of your battery from this branch out here. And then the power out of this branch here is what runs to the toggle on of your delay timer, which is what it activates this thing. So as far as setting, so it's these 3 branches. It's going to be this branch, and this first branch that you're going to set, and they really just have a difference of 2. So it's best to work backwards because you want to decide, okay, well, how much do I want to charge to my battery? So I'm sending 130 because let's assume that I end up using all active usage of 100. 100 divided by 0.8 for the charging efficiency rule gives you 125. So at least 126 or more. I'm going to send 130 this way, which means if this is set to 130, I need 1 coming out of here. So 130, 131, 132 if you consider this branch its requirements. So I need 132 arriving here, which I have. So I set that to 132, so I'd have 132 here, 1 for this, 130 for that, 1 for that. And so if this requires 132 coming out of here, that means, and I need 1 for this, that's 132, 133, 134. If you're following me here with the power required for this branch. So I have 134 arriving here. So you can really just think of it as whatever your power out is here, whatever you decide this needs to be, add 2 for every branch going backwards. So this will be 100. If this is 130, you're going to need to set this one to 132. If this is set to 132, you need this set to 134. So an example would be 150, 152, 154. That's all you got to do. And so that is it as far as putting it together and setting all your branches to what you need. That's all. That's the completion of the actual build. So testing this, and here's what we're going to do now is I'm going to run it and show you how it works. So assuming you have fuel in your generator, the way it works is that it takes whatever you set this value to. Once you get to here, you have 132 arriving here because you're going to have, like I said, 132 coming out of here. I'm sorry, 134 arriving here, 132 here, and 1 coming out of here. And when this drops below 134, so your monitoring value is whatever you send out of here. So when this drops below 134, you're going to release this blocker, which is going to turn on the generator. And so once it does that, if the voltage drops within 40 of what you need and this thing turns on, it's going to put out 40 here. You've got the power out of this running to that root combiner there. It's going to bring this thing back up to its value, and then that's when it's going to cycle. So we can demonstrate that by unhooking one side of this. So if I unhook that, that's 40 root power coming out that I've removed, and you can see the generator has turned on. And what it's going to do is it's going to keep cycling and check to see, well, is the root power Still below, yes, then it's going to cycle again and cycle again. So however long you set this timer to, that's how long this is going to run for as the the monitor, quote unquote. And so it's going to keep doing this until that power comes back up over 134 or greater. So if I hook this back up, then now you can see that it's still in a cycle, and now it turned off because my power has returned to the value that is above what I want. So, just fixing that wire, it triggered it, but it's going to run for one cycle and turn off, and that's it. So that's how it's going to behave if it loses a power within the range. So, and what I mean by that is this is putting out 40, which means because I dropped, I've got 20 and 20, so 40. So I'm now putting out enough that I'm back exactly to 134, but I have that 134 only because of the generator, which means it's going to cycle this timer because this is providing power, here intermittently. So it keeps cycling to check. So once I hook this back up and I have my 40, it's now going to complete. And so there you go. Now, the other way this can happen is if you lose power that is beyond the ability of this generator to actually provide what you tried to keep it to. So let's say I lose all 4 of these, and so I'm going to lose 80 here. So if I unhook this whole chain, the generator is going to turn on, but it's not going to cycle. And the reason for that is that we are now below. So we're putting out 117 here. We're not even at the 130 I wanted because this generator only has ability to put out 40. And since I lost 80, I don't have the ability to get this back up. So if I were to hook a second generator onto here, which if that's something you guys want, leave in the comments and I'll make a video on how to do 2 generators or 3 generators, whatever you want. But if I had a second generator, then it would be cycling. But because I'm beyond the 40 that this can put out by losing 80, it's just going to continuously run. Now, if I notice how the delay timer is not running, if I were to hook this back up, it's gonna trigger and cycle once, and then turn off. And there you go. So once it came back. So that's the 2 ways that this thing will run, is it'll cycle if it's within the bounds of the generator like it's doing right now, and it's going to keep doing that. If I hook this back up, it's going to finish its current cycle and turn off. If I lose all of it beyond it, it's just going to run. And essentially, it might not charge the battery, but it will slow down its discharge so much so that it could, it could double, triple, quadruple its time that it can run for as long as you have fuel in this. And so again, if I hooked it all the way back up, let's say I hook up, I'll unhook this and say that I get only 40 of it back. Now it's going to start cycling because it's within the bounds of this, and it's going to keep doing that until I get the final 40 back. And so that is how it works. It actually works really, really well. And so the last thing we're going to do is we're just going to talk about one of the caveats of this and why it is both a pro and a con. You'll notice that, as I showed you before, let's say you lose just some of your voltage and you're within the bounds, it's going to start doing its cycling like it's doing now. And so that's because you lost some of it. But let's say this is based on the sun going down, so you get to the point where it triggers it because it goes below and the sun keeps going down, and eventually the sun goes down to the point where you have no power left coming into it. It's going to turn itself off because it started the delay timer because it lost some of the power but not all the power. And so there's a pro and a con to this. The pro is that if the sun goes down every night on your server, you don't necessarily just want this running all night because the battery has the ability to buffer a night cycle, and it's fine because then the sun will come back up, the solar panels will get more power, and it'll recharge whatever it lost in the 10 or 15 minutes, whatever the night's set to. And so, but if and so that's a pro because you don't necessarily want this thing just running for no reason every single night when the sun goes down. Whereas if it loses, like if I disconnect 80 from it, it's going to turn on and it's not going to cycle because it lost so much power that it is just going to run. And then once it gains, so if I disconnect this so that I only get 40 back, now it's going to start cycling like I showed you before, and it's going to keep doing that until it gets more back. But the point here is that it does have the limitation that once you start losing power, and this only applies if you only have solar panels, when you start losing power like this, it's going to start doing its cycling. But if it continues to lose power, which is what would happen as the sun goes down with solar panels, once it loses enough power, it's just going to turn the generator off, which is okay because that's just the sun going down. So it's kind of you have to think about the reason that you're using it, I guess, is really the point. So, and that, folks, is just about all I've got. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them below. Otherwise, you can get me on my Discord. See you later.